Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site. We're recording episode 763 as we start to touch just barely. We're a month away from the NFL draft, just under a month from the NFL draft. And we are talking draft, episode 763. Got my co-host Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. And we're going to delve into the NFL draft, but it seems like, Seth, we're going to lead with, Ty Simpson, as suddenly we're a part of the draft process where it's a foregone conclusion that Fernando Mendoza is going to go first overall. And so ranking quarterbacks is kind of like useless. And by and large, there might be another, and Simpson might go in the first round, but what is happening right now is that in the last week, suddenly he's a first round lock. The Cardinals are looking to get him. And not only that, as we heard Dan Orlovsky come out and say that Ty Simpson of Alabama is the number one quarterback, the top quarterback in this draft over Indiana's Fernando Mendoza. And that is quietly something that is believed around the league, but people are too scared to say it. And then what was it? I can't remember who said it, but it was retweeted by our Amirov, who set up that. I think it was Mike Greenberg had said that, talking to 12 to 15 general managers, and only 2 disagreed, that came out and said, no, Fernando Mendoza's better. What is happening right now? Because are we just too far removed from the college football playoff to really have a sane football takes right now?
Yeah. And, it's one of those situations where the draft season's just way too long, obviously, and the way that the NFL staggered everything, that you have all of these insane takes and things of that nature. And so that's what's happening now. If somebody was convicted that Ty Simpson was quarterback 1, it wouldn't have taken until the end of March to come back and say that, right? It would have been a conversation at the combine when his measurements came up and people had questions about it. It would have been a conversation about when he declared and the fact that, he's not playing at this level, or he had all of these struggles, but what I did see was X, Y, or Z. So that's what this is. There's also this, reality, and I hate calling things out like this, but the reality that Dan Orlovsky is rep by CAA and Ty Simpson is rep by CAA. And it's always good for business, right? To drum up interest in one of the guys that is.
You're on the same team. You're all on the same team. It's not quite when Carson Palmer's brother Jordan Palmer is always hyping up whatever guy that he happens to be training or who happened to go to USC. But it's just that it's funny because Orlovsky's got this huge platform and does have a reputation for being quite analytical and having good takes. And this one comes out of nowhere. I'm like, how many people actually believe? And if general managers are, I made the joke that only 2 disagreed, and then I said, in fairness, none of the other ones responded. So
Right.
So a 12 to 15 general manager text. I texted 15 general managers and only 2 of them disagreed. Oh, but the other one, that you left out the part where the other guys didn't even answer. It was just 2 guys that said, no, Fernando's better, and no one else paid attention. Just now, which brings us to the Cardinals and Ty Simpson, because it seems to be gaining a little bit of steam. And we're going to talk more about, we're going to touch on each position and what day in the draft need they have. But Ty Simpson to the Cardinals is gaining some steam, but Adam Schefter basically said he's going in the first round, whatever that means. Do you think by draft day that it'll end up being like a Michael Penix Jr. situation where somebody out of the blue takes him top 10, because that's what you do with quarterbacks? You pay the quarterback tax and you just bite the bullet and draft them high? Or is it going to be more Jackson Dart? Because people are suggesting it's going to be more Jackson Dart. And I actually wrote, it will go with like first, what do you think ultimately is going to happen with him?
I think he ends up going in the first round, but I think you hit it. It's a Jackson Dart situation, not a Michael Penix situation. I'm sure looking back, obviously hindsight, what is the reality? The Falcons wish they didn't do that, right? So it makes sense to have them come back and do that stuff. You look at the reality of the talent, right? And we've talked a little bit about it too. The strength of this draft after the first 10 picks is really not in premier positions. Which weighs down the value of the picks and things of that nature. And so for a guy like Ty Simpson, you're looking at the reality of a guy who is probably a solid day 2, maybe a third round level guy that's going to get pushed up because of that. I mean, we can start with Daniel Jeremiah, kind of the tastemaker of the draft scene. Second overall prospect, Jeremiah Love. Third overall prospect is an off-ball linebacker, Sonny Styles. That's not ideal for a draft, right? The 8th overall prospect, Caleb Downs, a safety. So you look at the top 10, and you've got a quarterback in Mendoza. You've got, edges in David Bailey, Arvell Reese, Ruben Bain. You've got a wide receiver in Cardinal Tate. You got a cornerback in Mansour Delaney and an OT in Francis Maagu. But, like, holy cow. Because then you get into it, right? And you've got interior offensive linemen. You've got tight ends. You've got more safeties. And, like, the top 20, 12 of them, 8 of them play what people would consider non-premier positions. Then you get into the next grouping, and you've got a guy that you and I, we'll talk about when we get there. We both like him a lot, Jordan Tyson out of ASU, but man, that guy does not play a lot. Then you got a guy like Akeem Mesidor, who is, I think he and I were classmates back in the day. I mean, that guy's like 26 years old. So, like, you've got all these guys, and yet you look at them, and it's just not a class where you're like, oh man, this is great. And even with all of that, think about this, Jess. Even with all of that, Daniel Jeremiah has Ty Simpson 38. So you're talking about a day 2 player in this class. You're talking about a guy that's undersized. I know people will be like, well, he's bigger than Kyler, but he's undersized at 6 foot.
Well, here's the thing. Kyler's 5'10", 210, 5'10", 207, or about there. He's 6'1", 211. So he's taller. He's lean. Like Kyler's not a frail dude. Like he's short, but he's jacked.
And also he's a 1 year
and an elite mover and runner.
Right. And also, you know, you look at Ty Simpson, he's a 1 year starter with games that make you go, huh, right? Like, and so in this class, if you were to say take him at, you know, 3, you're basically say, like, putting all your chips in the middle, right? You're basically saying, like, this is my guy. I'm staking my career to him. Here's the thing, though. If you make a move up for Ty Simpson back into the first round, so from 34 to, say, 24-ish, you're still staking him as the guy. You're still saying this is the guy that I'm going down with if it gets to that point. And the reality of that situation really becomes, that is Monty Austin-Fort's legacy. And so to me, this is what I take away from that, Jess. There's either, if it was to happen at 3 specifically, but even talking about it going from trading back up into the first round, you're literally saying this guy is worth my job. Because if you spend a first round pick on Ty Simpson, he has to hit. And here's the thing. He may not even get an opportunity to save your job. Like, that's the wild thing.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. Like, there's 3 ways based on what we know right now. If we're going to assume, as Adam Schefter says, I'll tell you this much: he's going in the first round. Okay. There's one of 3 things that the Cardinals are going to have to do. 1, they're going to have to reach. at 3, they're going to have to trade back, and they're going to have to trade up. And of those 3, I'm only okay with trading back. But in this scenario, if the Dallas Cowboys came to the Cardinals with the 12th and the 20th picks and said, hey, we want number 3, I'd consider it, because at 12 you could probably get a quality tackle. You can get Ty Simpson at 20, and then you don't lose any future picks. You could get a decent edge in round 2, and I think for me that's really the only one, because taking him at number 3, that's wild. That's wild. And like you were saying, and especially because we've talked about this. Like, they might just draft Ty Simpson and draft another one next year. Like, but okay, don't trade up. If you're going to draft another quarterback, but don't do the Josh Rosen. They traded up for Josh Rosen and then ended up with the number 1 pick. That was a big waste. Like, so the only way that I'd feel good about taking Ty Simpson in round 1 is if Dallas came calling, basically, and they get both those number 3. If Dallas is going to go all in, they say, hey, we want Jeremiah Love before Tennessee gets him. They move up. They give the Cardinals those 2 firsts. They get a tackle. You can get Fano or something there at 12. You can get Simpson at 20, and then you still have your picks. Because if you trade up from 34 up to 26, well, for example, the one that Field Yates has on his 2-round mock draft, it costs the Cardinals their 3rd round pick and next year's 3rd round pick. And so if you're giving away assets to that, So you're going up to get him. That means you don't have a second round pick because you've burned that on a quarterback. You don't get a pick on day 2 at all, and they still have needs. And you're giving up a day 2 pick next year. I'm not sold enough on him
for a guy that's not like you ideally wouldn't even play this year.
Yeah, well, we know very well he would play because Jacoby Brissett's at quarterback, which means he would last 5 games.
Well, and that's the thing. You and I have joked about it quite a bit, but you draft or you have Jacoby Brissett to get to your next guy, and so if it is Ty Simpson, the question becomes like, what is the value of that? And then the other question becomes is, if like, when do you pull that trigger? Like, if you have a season like this one with Jacoby, I mean, do you wait till 1-11, or would you pull the trigger? I mean, you're 2-1 or 1-2, excuse me, and you lose 85-44 to your rivals, and now you're 1-4. Do you really run it back? Like, those are all the questions you have to ask yourself. And so then you look at it and you go, okay, well, you trade it back. You didn't address the second biggest need, right? Like, you didn't address the edge position, something you and I've discussed. You got, let's just throw Spencer Fano. You got Fano there, right? Or Monroe Freeling, a guy that's really climbing up draft boards. You got him, so now you're feeling more confident about your right tackle. But I mean, you really have nothing on changed on the defense outside of maybe potentially possibly being worse because you actually lost Calais Campbell, who was your best defensive front 7 guy last year. I mean, as good as Josh Sweat was with the 12 sacks, we've highlighted it. Like, this dude literally did nothing in the fourth quarter of games. So it's a gamble, and that's the thing. It's either complete and utter conviction from Monty Austin-Fort, or
if Ty Simpson's your guy and you go for it. Like, if you think he's the guy, go for it. But just don't think that we're all going to be on board with it.
But also, that's the thing. It's either that conviction or it's utter desperation, and we know how that ends up, right?
Yeah, and I will say this: the Cardinals' quarterback situation is built for drafting a guy like Ty Simpson. It is. It's set up perfectly for now. And I will say this: if Ty Simpson's at 34, I'm 100% okay with it because it didn't cost you anything else. Now, could you get a different player that you need? It was like, here's like draft scenario. And then we're going to talk about the draft scenarios. Like, you go edge in round 1, you go Simpson in round 2. We're like, you could get a tackle. You could, like, the Cardinals have the tackles. Like, you could get through a season with Elijah Wilkinson or Christian Jones or DeMontre Jacobs or Josh Fryer at right tackle. You could, or the new guy, Oli Udo. Like, they've got guys they could run with at tackle and be okay. Sure. But getting, like, and if you go round 2 with Simpson and you end up with the top pick next year, because it didn't cost you anything extra, you can draft Arch Manning at the top of the draft, and then you've got Ty Simpson as your young number 2, and you feel okay because in that scenario, if he's in round 2, cool, go for it. Because that, as long as you don't have to give up more to get a guy that you're just going to replace next year, that's cool with me.
Well, and the reality of this is just my concern, and my biggest issue with all of this is Monty shouldn't be making this decision. And that's where my issue is with everything, is you have a GM who has failed miserably. I mean, there's no other way around it. He's literally the GM of a 2-win team without Kyler Murray, who he thought was so bad and such a plight on his program that he got rid of for nothing and is eating the contract. And so this guy now gets to make a secondary decision on that whole situation. And so the question becomes, if it doesn't work out, or they have to go to Ty Simpson, and he understandably struggles in for a team that isn't really set up for a rookie to be successful. Does he get to stick around again to see it out? Like, how long does he get? And then the other question becomes, does poor Mike LaFleur get the boot with him? Like, it's not like it's Mike LaFleur's fault that Monty stunk for 3 years. So I think that's what my biggest concern is with drafting Ty Simpson, unless it's at pick 34, like you spelled out. Like, you invest any other assets than 34, and you're allowing a guy who is clearly been really not good at what he's supposed to be doing to really make a decision about the franchise. And especially, if, like you said, he's giving up future assets and he's going to be gone. Like, that's where I'm struggling with the whole thing.
All right, let's move on and talk positions. Coming on next on the Rest of the Year podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk. We're going to go position by position on offense. What sort of priority draft-wise do they need? That's coming next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise of Seaward podcast, the Best Our Cardinals Talk on the web. We are now we're again talking about the NFL draft. The Cardinals have made their moves in free agency. We want to go position by position on the offensive side of the ball and sort of peg, if they're drafting a guy at that position, where should the priority be? Now, at quarterback, based on what they have, in my opinion, the quarterback, they have top of the draft sort of needs, right? They have a top of the draft need at quarterback, but you could, like we just highlighted, you could see them going round 2, but the reality of the situation of quarterback that they have warrants top of the draft priority. Like, a top 10 quarterback is what they need in the draft. They're just not going to get it.
Right. And that, is a big thing. And it's actually the poll question. And that's why I was so glad that this podcast is coming out today, that I'm dropping on my site. What is the Cardinals' biggest needs heading into the draft? And the options are quarterback, offensive line, edge, and linebacker. And I think we would all agree the biggest need is still quarterback, but that doesn't mean that it's the one that you have to address. It's just
right.
The biggest.
Well, it's just because it doesn't work this year, because the one guy you'd want to draft is going first overall, and that's all you're going to get. Right. Do they have Fernando Mendoza need at quarterback? 100%. The question is Ty Simpson that guy? And no, we've already highlighted that. But at running back, what day, like in terms of need, what day do they need in terms of running back based on what they have on the roster right now?
I mean, the reality is 0. They can't, again, a position of need, it is not. Is the best player in the draft at 3 Jeremiah Love? Probably. I mean, we can debate it, but I mean, it's definitely a legitimate question, and he's a legitimate answer about being the best, the guy after Mendoza.
And how, like, if they went that direction, how very Tyler Algier like would it be to have that happen where they signed him to a 2-year deal and then immediately draft, just like they drafted him in 2021, and then when it got, or 2022, and then immediately after that got Bijan Robinson.
Well, and here's my question, even more than Algier, like you're either cutting or PUPing James Conner or Trey Benson, right? Like you can't have I mean, even with a pay cut, don't get me wrong, James Conner, love what he's done, everything, appreciate it. Even with the pay cut, there's a 0% justification of Jeremiah Love, Tyler Algier, James Conner, and Trey Benson. Now, is that the best running back room the Cardinals could ever put together? 100%. But you can't, think about it. Jeremiah Love would immediately be a top 5 cap hit at wide receiver, at running back. And then you just signed Tyler Algier and renegotiated James Conner to drop his cap hit so he stayed with the team. Like it literally would make no sense. But like you said, wilder things have happened.
Yeah, like in terms of, for me, the priority is at best day 3. You can always throw a day 3.
Oh yeah,
to the mix. That's where I'm like, at quarterback, what need do they have? They have top 10 need. At running back, they have no need. So like in terms of priority, if they draft a running back, I don't want to see it before day 3 personally.
Right.
What about wide receiver? I mean, you've got Marv, you've got Michael Wilson. Maybe he gets extended this offseason. It sounds like it might be a possibility. But again, Kendrick Bourne. Where is in your opinion, the priority for them to draft a receiver? The highest that you think it should happen?
I would say day 2, and that would be like if the right guy fell to them.
Yeah.
So like if you are sitting at day 2 and a guy that is different than what you have. So let's say a guy like, I think it's, Omar Cooper, right? Big fan, really like his game. Is he really different than Michael Wilson or Marvin Harrison Jr., in what he's going to give you? Probably not, right? But like if you can get, a Mekhi Lemon, who I know won't be there. I'm just throwing out names. He could make sense. But it would have to be the right guy at the right time. A guy that they don't have, or that would replace, Kendrick Bourne in a year, and like Casey Concepcion. Like he's a really, really good fit in terms of style and what he would bring. But again, I don't really know if that's what I'm doing at 34 in this draft.
For me, unless there's a crazy drop, the absolute earliest I'd like would be in late day 3. So like round 3, late day 2. So like round 3. But if they're for me, if they're going to take a receiver, day 3 is better, or maybe not at all. Tight end though, that's a clear, like if you're going to draft a tight end, it better be on day 3. And it better be someone that is,
the only kind of exception would be if there's a situation with Tip Ryman that all of us are unaware of, right? Like something happened.
Well, even that is because Tip Ryman, who they drafted in around 3, not because he was an awesome blocker, because he is that. Plus, he has the upside to be more than that. We just have seen nothing else. They've only used him literally as a blocking tight end, and they haven't given the opportunity to show more than that, because he's got the athleticism and the soft hands to be more than that. But I'm thinking like a guy who's going to replace Elijah Higgins in a year, and those are day 3 guys, because Higgins was a converted receiver. He was a 6th-round pick of Miami. And so, like, for me, day 3, is sort of their maybe need. Like it's a day 3 priority at tight end.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's, and again, I would, because of the position and the way it works, you can always, day 3, but I would even say like an undrafted free agent.
Yeah, totally. And then on the offensive line, we can kind of talk. So tackle, all right, tackle. Their need, at least at right tackle, is potentially first round. I've said this before. When you're looking at right tackles, I'm okay with drafting a guy that you see as a right tackle early if you also see him as a left tackle. Like you have your left tackle. I don't think you draft a right tackle only early. Round 1 in general, but do they have a round 1 need at tackle? They have a round 1 and early day 2 need at tackle, I think, is where their need is at right tackle. So you could go round 1, late round 1, early round 2, and I think that's kind of where their priority need is at.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You've got a bevy of talent that fits that, which is nice, right? You've got guys, that I've mentioned. You've got guys later on that all fit kind of those things that you've spelled out, and that would make it an easy pick at 3 or 34.
What about guard and center?
I mean, you need a right guard in the sense of you've got 2, so you have none, right? Like we know it's Paris Johnson, we know it's Isaac Ciamolo, we know it's Yelda Froholt, we know it's either Isaiah Adams or John Gaines, or maybe even the guy they just signed, right? That's been with the Eagles. And again, if Matt Pryor, like if that, but again, if those are your options, you don't have a guy. Or if you're saying like there's an open competition. Now, if you're saying like Isaiah Adams is the guy, I'm fine with that, but that means you have a day 2 need at the position because you need to have a backup plan. Not only do you need to have a backup plan, but you need to be realistic in that Isaac Ciamolo is 33 years old. So if you draft a guy on day 2, say with your 3rd round pick, guess what? He could potentially replace Isaac Ciamolo in a year or 2, depending on how he plays out that contract. So those are the things that you should be looking at. But the reality is we don't even know what the plan is on the right side right now, other than, hey, look at all these guys we added, and we still have Isaiah Adams and John Gaines and Josh Fryer. So we're in a great spot.
I'd say, considering the other needs that they have, I would question a little bit a guard or center earlier than round 3. Honestly, earlier than round 3. Day 3, honestly, I'm like, draft anyone except for quarterbacks. You're wasting your time. You draft a day 3 quarterback, in my opinion.
Right.
But quarterback or special, like, just don't draft those on day 3. Like, but any other position, honestly, day 3, do whatever. Like, but get positioned wherever.
Right.
But let's move on.
So we're
Coming
in
to
kind of lockstep with those, interior O line. Yeah. Like you don't really need it, but like you probably should look at it in round 3 if
like,
you're not.
It's never
sold.
like should you ever complain about a round 3 guard who could potentially be a star? No, that's a good spot for him. It's a good value where you could get them. It's just that normally they don't pan out for the Cardinals.
Right.
Let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. Coming up next, another Rise Up Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk. And let's look at the defensive side of the ball, the round or day priority where the Cardinals have their needs at each position. That's coming up next on Rise Up Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk. And when we wrap up this show talking about the defensive side of the ball, we look at each position group. At what point in the draft is sort of the highest priority? We look at the interior defensive line based on what they have right now. Honestly, like maybe round 2. I'm more comfortable round 3 later because they need Nolan and Robinson to pan out. They need that. And, they've already, they keep spending money. They've, they spent money on Justin Jones. They spent money on Bilal Nichols. They spent money on Dalvin Thomas, and they spent money on Calais Campbell. They drafted 2 first-round defensive tackles in Darius Robinson and Walter Nolan. They need those guys to pan out, and because you can't keep burning premium picks at those positions. And so ideally with the bodies they threw at this offseason, like maybe there's a round 2 guy, but I'd feel, for me, round 3 or later for the defensive interior.
100%. I don't think you can take anybody any sooner. If you do, it's a conversation about what the deployment of Darius Robinson is going to be and what the health of Walter Nolan is, right?
Yeah. We go to the defensive edge, the outside linebacker group, which in terms of their need, yes, they've got Josh Sweat, but the problem is that everyone else combined in that room, Zaven Collins, Baron Browning, Bijo Jalari, Jordan Birch, Elliott Brown, who hasn't played, Eku Leota also hasn't played. Everyone else combined for 5.5 sacks. That's less than Calais Campbell had, the aging veteran who's honestly nearly as old as Seth is. And Seth, yeah. And then, Josh Sweat at 12 sacks, but again, we've talked about this. They have a round 1 need, but you would accept maybe certain guys at the top of round 2. They have a round 1 to round 2 need based on what they have. Now, they got Jordan Birch in the 3rd round last year. Like this year, I will question the Cardinals if they don't get a pass rusher in rounds 1 or 2.
I mean, unless they trade down, and I like Francis Mauga, so like, don't get me wrong. This is not a shot at him. But you look at just like the overall grades of this class, and 3 of the best 10 players are edges, and you desperately need an edge.
And you overlooked Will Anderson 3 years ago.
And so you look at it. If it's Arvell Reese, it's Arvell Reese. If it's David Bailey, it's David Bailey. If it's Reuben Bain, it's Reuben Bain. But one of those 3 needs to be holding up the Cardinals red with the number 1 and their name stitched on the back on draft day, or there better be a damn good reason it's not happening, right?
Yeah, that's my personal thought. And then they need that. Would I accept a guy like R. Mason Thomas maybe in round 2? Yeah, the kid out of Clemson. Yeah, I would. Like, there's a couple of pass rushers. I'm like, okay, there's some traits there, but what we keep seeing time and time again is where they go day 2. Like day 2 edge rushers rarely are big impact players, and they need a big impact player. They need someone impactful on the other side to improve that defense. We need Josh Sweat. It will help Josh Sweat to be better. It'll help him to be more impactful late in games. And Josh Sweat's not getting younger. Like it's going to be soon that he's going to be hitting the decline.
Well, and the reality about pass rusher in general is, right, you can't have too many. You can never have too many. And when you have one, you don't have enough. So why not add, hopefully, a second one? And then next year, hopefully you're not picking top 5. But if you're picking top 5, then you go to your next biggest need, which we've already outlined, but also understand that it's not, it's not a draft to need that. So it's just one of those situations where you need you need the juice. You need somebody that comes off the edge, that teams up with Josh Sweat, that can take over for Josh Sweat in 2 years as the edge one. And by the way, do you think the Texans are like, well, we got Will Anderson, so we don't
So we need
Hunter? No, here, let's pay Danielle Hunter $50 million a year, whatever the contract was. Like, I get it. It's you want to do things your own way, but like you look at the defense the Texans have, it's one of the top 3 defenses in the NFL. It's not a bad defense to follow. So follow it. You've got the veteran in Danielle Hunter or Josh Sweat. Now you need the young guy.
You do. Yeah, you do. We go to the off-ball backers. This is an interesting one because you've got an elite guy at the top of the draft. Sonny Styles would be fantastic if the Cardinals were in another situation where they didn't drastically need a pass rusher or a tackle. I actually wouldn't feel too bad about Sonny Styles that early, except for we know that that's not Monty Austin-Fort's style. In terms of what they've got, even day 2 feels rich, right? Like off-ball backer, it's probably a day 3, even though, you know, Mac Wilson isn't, and just kind of like the Cody Simon signing, drafting last year. Now, that didn't work out as a rookie. That doesn't mean it won't work out, and it might, you know, play out much like his career at Ohio State, where his impact, he has to wait his turn. And last year he took a lump. He took his lumps having to start the last 9 games. But is it kind of off the ball backer? It's, you know, day 3 maybe. And, you know, if you want to get crazy, you go round 3.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at this class and there are guys that fit exactly what they need. Without having to break the bank, you know, and there are guys that will give them the opportunity or the ability to really compete. So it's not a day 1 priority. It's probably not a day 2 priority. You know, 65 where they pick in the 3rd round even feels kind of heavy for that. But
Yeah.
at least there you can look at it and go, okay, I get it. Whereas, you know, 3 or 35 or 34, whatever it is, you're like, what are you doing? By the way, you're right. Sonny Styles would be a home run. I mean, there's zero doubt he would be a home run, but like, would his impact be greater than, you know, his teammate Arvel Reese's or, you know, David Bailey's? Like, that's the question you have to answer.
Yeah. We go to cornerback, which has been the Cardinals' favorite things under Monty Austin-Fort to do, where they've drafted 7 cornerbacks in 3 drafts, and 4 of them in the top 100. You've got a Max Melton, you've got a Will Johnson, you've got a Denzel Burke, you've got a Garrett Williams. He's coming. He's not likely playing early. You've got a Keitrell Clark. You've got veterans and Sean Murphy Bunting and Star Thomas. Would I be surprised if the Cardinals took a cornerback in round 3? No. Cornerbacks are always good to have. Would I like them? Like, I personally don't want to see a cornerback before day 3, but I'd be okay with cornerback in round 3 because, especially like you can never have enough good cover guys.
No, you really can't. And you look at it, you know, they've got these needs, and the reality is the depth chart, you know, left cornerback Will Johnson, you're excited about, you're cautiously optimistic about him, but the reality is, you know, they're not, you know, he didn't exactly set the world on fire last year. You know, you look at the other side, you've got right now Denzel Burke, right? But probably Max Melton or not, because who knows with his, you know, response on the Instas about Nick Rallis coming back. You know, you mentioned Garrett Williams. He's not gonna be ready to start the season They brought back Sean Murphy-Bunting, but he's just a guy. They brought back Star Thomas, and he's a nice veteran depth piece. So it's like, yeah, you've got all these guys, and the reality is you don't have a single one. You're like, that position's locked down. Now, if Will Johnson's healthy, I think we both agree that position's locked down. But until Will Johnson plays a 15-game season, that position is not locked down.
On safety.
Again, I mean, with Buddha up there in age, you can always add somebody. With Rabbit and his size, you can always add somebody. But they brought in Andrew Wingard. You really, I mean, you look at the roster, the holes everywhere else. As much as we went through everything, right? Defensive line. Can you justify taking a safety over another defensive lineman? Probably not, right? Can you justify taking a safety over another off-ball linebacker? Probably not. The only position you could probably justify safety over is wide receiver and tight end, right? Like, you're like, and running back, obviously, but like outside of that, you look at it, you go, I don't want a safety at 64. So, in the fourth round, you could grab a safety, but I don't want to see a safety until day 3, right?
Yeah. So come on, get that edge guy, get a tackle. Like,
I mean, I know we're going to go through it. I know we're going to go through all the names, and we're going to do our show. But if I told you right now on March 24th at 10:20 p.m. that the Cardinals left the draft with David Bailey and Max Ahinacor, you'd be like,
yeah, that's perfect. That's the perfect 2 rounds. I could do whatever after that.
Yeah, you're like, all right, well, sign me up, right? Like, I'm in. We've got a potential really good right tackle that could play left tackle if needed, and we've got the best pure pass rusher in the draft. Okay, sign me up. Like, and we'll go through everybody, right? We're going to go through all the names and the guys to know. But like on March 24th, if that's the conversation, you go, yeah, you leave with David Bailey and Max Ahinacor. I'm in. Like, this team is better than it was going into the draft, and that's what you want. And we went through it signing by signing. The worst thing that we could honestly say about the free agency isn't that they got worse. It's just that they basically stayed stagnant, right?
They were a 14-loss team, and they are no better after free agency. So, woo, good job. With that, yeah, that's it. And so hopefully this is the draft where Monty Austin-Fort's got to prove himself. It really is. And with that takes care of this edition of the Rise Up Seaward podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk and Web. We've wrapped it all up. We'll be back again in a couple of days. We'll have more talk. We'll probably talk mock drafts, but we are starting to talk draft, which hopefully means, guys, that we can talk about more positive things, because the draft is all about hope. Unless they take Ty Simpson at 3rd overall, and then I'm just going to break things. Yeah, but until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms, so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Roll!